let's talk about, before we go, let's get into next week really quickly. We got a pretty crazy, I got to say, this is definitely for people who have followed on this channel and, my work on other channels. This is like my ultimate. This is my two favorite fighters. I mean, I would say with Oliveira, my favorite fighter of right now, and then with Poirier, my favorite fighter of pretty much all time, going at it. Lightweight belt, finally a chance for Poirier to get the undisputed gold, second chance for him, and then Charles Oliveira really to solidify himself, his first title defense in this one. Poirier comes in. He's like a minus 165 favorite right now, I see. And Oliveira plus 140 on the money line. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is an absolute banger. And, lightweight matchups, they're normally very competitive because you got just like the selection process to get into the UFC at lightweight is tough. And then, like you mentioned, everybody in the top 15 has built up a pretty credible resume. So to rise to the top of that division, to get to a title fight is very impressive, right? I had a wager last time out for Charles Oliveira on Chandler round one, TKO, and Chandler money line at plus 125. And it was because I felt like it was a coin flip type matchup. I felt like Charles could submit him. I felt like Charles could knock him out. I felt like Michael could submit him, and I felt like Michael could knock him out. And I know people might think I'm crazy, but I actually thought that was a really legit attempt on the guillotine from Chandler in that fight as well. Like, Chandler has good skills, and in the first round of a fight, he's just a live fighter. He's got a lot of power in both hands, and he's got just good power from the ground and pound positions as well. Just fought a pretty silly fight, I thought, overall. Stayed in the guard of Charles Oliveira when it was clearly giving him like paranoia of the highest level. So you could see him getting redder and redder in the top position. And when I saw the visual of them in between rounds, I knew my bets were all gone. And I think that, Charles Oliveira gotten better at answering adversity. And, Dustin Poirier, excellent fighter, also can answer the bell. I think he's just taken a lot of damage over the course of his career, been in a lot of really hellacious fights. And I think that in this matchup, some of the tools that he's used to bail himself out in matchups that get tough and gritty down the stretch, like wrestling people to the floor and staying on top. It's not to say it's impossible he could do that here. I just think it's less likely he'll do it comfortably. And I actually think that Charles is the better wrestler in the matchup. Probably not by a massive margin, but he's got a really good frame. He's long. He's got a lot of leverage. He knows how to use it, and he's crafty, right? So if Dustin is like trying to sprawl, then he could try and turn that into, different kind of front headlock entanglements, leg entanglements. But if he's not trying to sprawl and he's trying to push himself back to the fence, Charles is pretty expert at hopping on the back. Not like Brendan Allen at 185 tonight where he kind of lost that position. Charles is a magician when he gets on the back. And so ultimately, when I watch that Khabib fight back, it just makes me think that this could be a really, really tough fight for Poirier if Charles is able to get on his back at any point. It seems like he was a little bit panicky in that position. His hand fight sort of fell apart at a certain point. It seems like if you're going to test the mental fortitude of Dustin Poirier, it's not going to be in a blood and gut striking affair. We've basically had that borne out in front of our eyes several times. So unless you're going to off switch him, which I don't think is outside the realm either, Charles has pretty pinpoint strikes, long levers for arms. He hits hard. He hits from different angles. He's gotten more creative with his strikes over time. The Jared Gordon knockout, made everybody think that Jared Gordon is just a complete no chin guy. And he's kind of put a little bit of that to bed. I think that, that has aged a little bit better than people realize. So I think that the impressive win streak of Charles Oliveira is something I can't ignore. The fact that he's walking in with the title belt and he's coming in with the plus money distinction, I can't ignore that. And I think that because he's got more paths to victory in the fight, I think Dustin submitting Charles outside of the fourth or fifth round would be a little bit of a surprise to me, frankly. Whereas Charles, I think he's live to finish this fight in every round, in every position. And I think that, if this fight sees the scorecards, you know, I might have a heart attack. I might have to
Oh yeah.
wash my eyeballs and start betting on a new sport or something. But I think this has violence written all over it. I think somebody is going to be snoring within the first 3 rounds, one way or the other. And I think this is a tremendous treat for us fight fans that watch this stuff week in and week out. We slog through the tough ones to get to fight nights like this, where we're going to have, just banger after banger and punctuated by one of the greatest fights that the UFC could make right now. So let's get it done. 2 guys that have earned their keep, that have grinded and stuck around in a tough division where you don't get easy fights. And they've really put together impressive resumes. I just think that, the public is going to love that Dustin Poirier beat Conor McGregor in his last 2 fights. For me, it tells us a little bit less because Conor's like on the celebrity tour a little bit. But I did think that Conor, had really good moments in that last fight. A lot of people will disagree with me there. I understand that. But I thought that Conor, landed some shots that rocked Dustin and scrambled him a little bit and made him panic a little bit. But when he was on top, he was able to get that comfort back. He was able to put the toes in the cage for just a second and get out of that guillotine. And once he was on top, he made him pay. And I just don't know that he's going to have as many avenues against Charles, where some guys have gotten on top and felt comfortable, but then it ultimately went back to bite them. Ask Kevin Lee. If you go one too many times to that well, Charles can make you pay if you get there once. And he's got those long, really long, gangly arms, man. That's tough to avoid submissions with somebody like that. So unless we see, Charles do a quit job here, I think that it's going to be a very competitive fight where plus 140 looks a little bit crazy hindsight. But, that would be my initial thoughts on this matchup. I'm going to tape it a little bit deeper. Thoughts may change after that, but preliminary, I think that Charles is probably the value side, and I like him to win this fight outright.
Yeah, like for me, if we're going by the odds, it's Oliveira all day. As far as who I think is going to win, I can't call it. I honestly can't call it. Because both of these guys have exceeded the expectations so many times that it's meaningless to try to, cap them and to try to say they can't do this or they can't do that. So I feel like if this fight wasn't lined based on like a bookie line, it should be 50-50. But based on just, public perception and the need for two-way action, I see why the line is the way that it is. But you'll never get Charles Oliveira at this price ever again. And it's not even that I feel like he's, the way that you explain that he's crafty, it's just that he's so athletic and he's so dangerous in those positions that other guys aren't. Just go and watch Charles Oliveira versus Tony Ferguson. Okay. Tony Ferguson, supposed to be one of a super high level, grappler, and Charles Oliveira made him look pedestrian. He transitioned on him like it was, like it was training, and he's so elusive in those positions where you're right, Dustin finds comfort in going to those positions when he's in trouble. And if he reverts to that, he's going to be in trouble. And just the way that I'm talking this out with you, it seems like there's more ways for Charles to win this fight than there is for Dustin. The thing about it is that we've discounted Charles Oliveira's striking and he's shown us multiple times that his striking is there. Uh, his striking, it's precision. He doesn't have crazy power, but he has the precision, and he times things really well, and he's very he hits you with the shot that you don't see coming. So yeah, I gotta lean Oliveira. Just some numbers here. Dustin Poirier in his last 22 fights, 16-5-1 in his last 22 fights since 2012. He's won 11 of those 16 inside the distance. It's very familiar to Charles Oliveira. Oliveira is 20-8 since 2010. 14 of those 20 inside the distance. Both of these guys, you look at Dustin Poirier inside the distance, 11-10-1 in his last 22 fights, plus 10.6 units on the inside the distance prop. And then Oliveira right there, 14-8 in 22 fights, 9.98 units on the inside the distance prop. Oliveira has gone under the betting total in 15 of his last 22 fights. Poirier has gone under the betting total in 11 of his last 22 fights. You think about both of the times that these guys have gone to decision in their recent memory. Poirier went to decision against Hooker. That was a really, tough fight for him. And I feel like that's kind of, I don't know what it was about him in that fight, because I don't know. There was just something about him. He kind of like broke out of a shell in that fight. He didn't seem like himself in the early moments. And then after getting almost destroyed, getting put on ice skates by Hooker, he kind of regrouped and came out and has looked great in fighting since turning around that fight against Hooker, with the two solid performances against McGregor. But I point to the fight against Max Holloway. I feel like that fight really showed. I think that fight was like probably his best stand-up fight performance. I know that everybody will point to McGregor, the two McGregor wins, but I feel like just he showed everything that he could, just as far as going the full 5 against Max at UFC 236. Then we look at Charles Oliveira. The last time that he went to decision was that fight that I just mentioned against Tony Ferguson, which I think, he's had this crazy run of most finishes in the UFC. That fight that he had against Tony Ferguson, I think the 30-26 performance, that might have been his best fight in his whole career, at least in his UFC career, in my opinion. Apart from knocking out Michael Chandler to win the belt, what he did to Tony Ferguson basically, took the boogeyman persona away from Tony Ferguson piece by piece in that fight. The guy will never be the same after that, at least in my eyes, from what Charles Oliveira, from the person that Tony Ferguson was and what we thought he was going into that fight versus who he was coming out of it, and the person he went into it against, Beneil Dariush. Charles Oliveira broke that man. And because of that, I feel like it's just the will and the determination and the heart. It's hard to go against Poirier, but you'll never get that price on Charles Oliveira ever again, unless he fights Habib. Unless he fights Habib or McGregor. And that's a completely different story. But this fight, in this landscape, I think, you got to go with Poirier. And I think, I'm sorry, you got to go with Charles Oliveira. You have to go with Charles Oliveira at that price, at plus money. If it was the other way, if Poirier was getting the plus money, I'd say, you probably have to go with Poirier. But this fight is pretty much, I think, 50-50. And if you're getting that much of a plus money price at plus 145 on Charles Oliveira, who's one of the best grapplers in lightweight history, period, you got to go with it. And I don't really, if somebody has a staunch argument that they're saying that they're going in on Poirier, it's just hard for me to as based on the value. I just don't want to. I wouldn't want to bet 165, and even at like a plus 115 or something inside the distance on Poirier, I just don't see it, because so much of what Poirier does good, Charles Oliveira does better. So yeah, what do you think? Any other final thoughts on that one?
I really think that most of the argument would be based around, a perceived striking advantage, potentially a cardio advantage. All I would mention is that we have seen, I feel like the Kevin Lee fight is a weird fight. If you go back and watch that one, um, Charles looked like he was about to like pull a quit job at one point in that fight. And then he
Yeah.
just like found his way back into it. He like looked like he was thinking about, and then he's like, you know what? I'll work my way back here. I am just concerned. The Paul Felder fight is the other one that comes to mind. If Poirier is able to get him down, the McGregor fight is a live outcome where he's like on top, just swarming him with ground and pound when he's the freshest as well. Dustin's a dangerous guy. He could definitely thump somebody, and he can just drop
Although
somebody. Yeah.
I will say this, you remember how good Oliveira was at evading Chandler when Chandler was going in for those big strikes, when Chandler dropped Oliveira. I feel like that he's good at that weird, like using his opponent's, ability to try to finish him, against them by, like, he tries to evade them, and then his opponent ends up getting gassed, and then that's when he grabs a hold of them. He's got that weird style where it's almost like a rope-a-dope ground game. And I feel like that's a live possibility here too, where if Poirier, ends up getting him down against the cage, similar to the McGregor, the end of that first round. If you were back in that scenario, if that's Oliveira, that's not an ideal position in my opinion for Poirier, because one of those strikes misses and he gets that arm. Look at what Oliveira did to Ferguson in those positions. I feel like he'll be able to wrap him up pretty quickly. What do you think about that? Just like if it gets into that ground and pound situation with him, stacking him up against the cage, as I feel like Oliveira, he has, even if he gets in one of those rough situations, I think he has the tools to get out of it. What do you think?
I think he should. And like I mentioned, I do think he actually has made substantial mental improvements. I feel like that was what was holding Charles back. He never lacked for skill. It just seemed like if the fight started going the other way, he might have had the good hammer, bad nail case going on. But seems like he's corrected a lot of that. And, I did take a pretty big bet, 2 units on Oliveira at the plus 145 tag against Tony Ferguson, because I felt like Tony kind of had the mojo beat out of him by Gaethje as well. I felt
Yeah.
like that fight was like a life altering fight. Should have been stopped so much earlier. Really unnecessary damage. He was being treated like a punching bag for several rounds, and I know he dropped him with the uppercut at one point. I just felt like Tony was never really in that fight. And it was really costly for his career too. And I thought that, it's just been a snowball since then. I did bet against him twice with Beneil as well. I thought the same thing was going to happen there. So, you got the underdog tag with Charles for some reason, and then Beneil's a significant favorite because the secret was out, right? I think that, in this case, Charles Oliveira, like you mentioned, this might be the last time we get these plus money odds, because if he beats somebody like Dustin Poirier, then the secret's out. And, Charles coming in here, if he had been an underdog against Michael Chandler, I'd have bet him there as well. Like you mentioned, sometimes on these fights, we're looking to just play an odds-based perspective. And I feel like these lightweight elite matchups are often coin-based or coin flip type fights.
Yep.
Even when I bet on McGregor against Poirier, the justification in my mind was that the line had moved from minus 300 McGregor to plus 125 McGregor. And on top of that, it's an elite lightweight matchup where either guy could win. So give me the underdog for a small bet. this time, I think it's again going to be an underdog play for me on the main event. And I think if you're getting a champion at an underdog distinction and they have more paths to victory, it's just a no-brainer for me at that point. They're also similar age, slight frame advantages on the Oliveira side. There's just a lot of things that point to him as a valuable bet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't get past the point of just you might never see this price on this fighter ever again. And, it'll be like, unless he fights Habib or we get a crazy, inflated line because of the public coming in on if he were to fight like a McGregor. But besides those two scenarios, I don't think if he wins this fight, I don't think we'll see a line on him